La nuit du chasseur.
Hey guys, RuneScape here with another commentary video. Today I'm going to be doing an in-depth guide to Dungeoneering. It's going to show you basically how to train Dungeoneering and all the ins and outs of it. However, this is not going to show you the basics of Dungeoneering, so if you're new to the skill, I highly recommend that you watch my first video. So let's get started. By now you should already have done a few dungeons and kind of know what you're doing, so I'm just going to jump right to it. First thing I want to talk about is your prestige. If you look at my interface right now, it says my current progress is 10 and my previous progress is 23, which is talking about my prestige. What prestige is basically bonus XP that you get per dungeon for doing a variety of dungeons. And what I mean by that is if you look on my floors, I can do up to 25 floors. Now, to keep me from doing floor 25 every single time and getting the maximum XP, there's a prestige meter, and after you've completed one floor one time, it'll have a check mark by it. And what that means is that you've already prestiged on that floor and you can no longer get a bonus. If you can do 25 floors, then your prestige can go as high as 25, and the cool thing about prestige is that the higher your prestige level, the more bonus XP you get for each individual floor. So for example, floor 3, even though I haven't done it, and even though it's a low floor, I'll still get a lot more XP because I'll get a prestige bonus of 25 instead of prestige bonus of 3 because it's a floor 3. And how XP is calculated is it's your base XP for completing the dungeon and then your prestige bonus XP on top of that, and it's an average of those two. So what you want to do is do every single floor you can to have the highest prestige. So you want to do, if you can do floors 1 through 10, you would do floors 1 through 10 until they're all check marked, and once all those floors are check marked, you should then reset your progress, and that will allow you to get prestige bonus on those floors again. Because if you had a prestige bonus of 10 and yet you can complete floors 1 through 15, you're only getting the prestige bonus of 10 and not 15. So you should always reset after you've done every floor that you can to get the most XP. I don't know if that's a little confusing to you, I don't know, but I hope it makes sense. So I'm going to move on to doing your first dungeon. When you're after you've done a few of them, what you want to do is bind a weapon. You should really do this the first time that you do a dungeon, but I didn't have time to talk about it in the first video. So if you go into any dungeon, what you want to do is always bind the best weapon you can wield. And I highly recommend binding a melee weapon, and I also highly recommend binding a spear, because a spear has a stab, slash, and crush attack, which is one of the few weapons in Dungeoneering that can do that. It has attacks that expose the weaknesses of a lot of monsters. And what binding is, if you don't know, is at level 1 you can bind one weapon, meaning that that weapon will always be with you no matter what dungeon you do, no matter what complexity you do, you will always have that weapon. And it's as easy as right-clicking on it and clicking bind. Now, at level 1, you can only bind one weapon, but you can also bind up to 125 of a certain rune or a certain arrow. And I think actually with elemental runes you can bind even more than 125. And then at level 50 you're allowed to bind 2 weapons. And then at level 100, 3 weapons, and at level 120, 4 weapons. Although it's rumored that that will change at some point. And if you don't have the good enough smithing level to bind a weapon that you want, you can, I recommend bringing in a friend that has a high smithing level, and he can do it for you and make the weapon for you, and then you can bind it. I'm going to talk about the starting room now, which is what you will always start in when you do a dungeon, and usually you're going to be doing complexity 6 hopefully, so you'll get very used to seeing this dungeon, the starting room, and it has a furnace in it, a water trough, a table with all your food, summoning obelisk, rune crafting altar, a spinning wheel, and a gatestone portal by default, although you can change the gatestone portal to anything you want. However, if you're doing large parties, you would recommend only using the gatestone portal, as it teleports you to your team leader or your party leader or wherever the gatestone is. You're going to want to get very familiar with this room because it's going to show you, it's going to allow you to make potions. It has a water trough right there. It's going to allow you to do a lot of things to make a lot of different items. For preparing for the dungeon, I recommend taking, you usually get arrows on a complexity 6 on a table. I recommend taking those arrows and selling them straight away, unless you're ranging, but you should have items binded. You should have arrows binded if you're going to be ranging. Selling those arrows and then buying a few certain items that are going to help you throughout a complexity 6 dungeon. That would be a pickaxe, a hatchet, a hammer, a tinderbox, a knife, and 1 to 2 anti-poisons. And that's the minimum that you need to take, and I usually keep them at the bottom of my inventory just to be safe, or just to keep them out of the way so I can keep the top of my inventory for food. I want to talk a little bit about skills. Skills in Dungeoneering are basically every skill in the game. For example, you might have to mine through a pile of rock to get past the door. You may have to burn some logs. You may have to trim some leaves or something to get through a door, but also inside of each room there could be ores that you can mine, or trees that you can cut, or things that you like, herbs that you can plant and pick, and you can fish and cook and basically do everything that you would in normal RuneScape, but in Dungeoneering to help you complete the dungeon. I won't really go in depth with that because it's so massive. It would be like doing a guide on the entirety of RuneScape, which I'm not about to do. But you should be very familiar with it. It's basically the same thing as regular RuneScape, just with different names. And it's going to help you just like it helps you in normal RuneScape. If you want armor, you need to make armor, and it helps you with defense. You know, just things like that. Very simple. So real quick, I want to talk about tiers. Tiers are pretty intense in Dungeoneering, and I don't really have time to go over all of them in depth, so I'm just going to show you a few that I think are really helpful. One being food. Basically, the only thing you need to know about food is that the higher tier, the better they heal. And I have a little screenshot here for you to look at. Unfortunately, if you were if you're a free player, you can only use up to tier 5 food. Tier 6 through tier 10 is members only. And there's no requirement to eat these, obviously, but there are requirements to cook them. Though I don't have time to go over that. You can look on the Dungeoneering part of the cooking guide. And then here I have a few screenshots of melee range and mage on tiers, which is armor and weapons. And again, only tier 1 to tier 5 is available for free players. Tier 6 through tier 10 is members, and then tier 11 is unobtainable unless from a drop, which requires level 99. You won't see very much primal or the tier 11s for the other groups either, but it's a pretty intense job. And basically the way the tiers work, the higher the tier, the better the item, and it's always 10 less than what the tier is. So if it's tier 9, it requires level 80. If it's tier 7, it requires level 60, and so on and so forth. Okay, so since Ja-Gex did such a great job at taking World of Warcraft and shrinking it to the size of a skill in RuneScape, which is pretty genius, I'm going to talk about leveling, but not in terms of levels itself. I'm going to talk about leveling in terms of floors, so I think that's a lot more relevant. I will be going 1 to 99 on this in the guide, but I don't exactly know the best way to get to 99. This is just what I believe would be the best way. So from floors 1 to 15, again, I highly recommend soloing them, and I highly recommend doing complexity 6. And then from floors 16 to 25, I'd recommend using a party and doing medium dungeons. But you usually want to have a party of 3 instead of a party of 2. That usually works out a lot better, and you get the floors done faster, and there's not really a dip in XP that way. And then Um, for floors 26 to 35, I recommend doing large parties with teams of 5. You can do it with teams of 3 or 4, but teams of 5 are going to be the fastest because that allows you to split up the teams with a 2-man team and a 3-man team to get the dungeon done a lot quicker, because a large dungeon literally takes up your entire Dungeoneering map. A few quick tips before I finish up this video. What you're watching right now is a video of me and some friends rushing a dungeon. Basically, you use rushing to get through dungeons quickly and get your prestige on lower level dungeons so that you can get a bigger bonus on higher level dungeons quicker. And then another tip is that you should always bring runes to Alk, because alking always gives more money than trading the smuggler. And if you need quick money, you can create air runes, and there will be a link in the description for a guide on how to make a lot of air runes very quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.